Rogue Yu-Gi-Oh decks aren't for the faint of heart. In fact, as someone that has topped and won multiple events using only Rogue decks, I can tell you that it's one of the most difficult paths and the rewarding. In case you guys didn't know, hi, I'm TheCaliEffect. I'll be your professor today for Rogueonomics. And today, we're going to be talking about the strongest Rogue Yu-Gi-Oh decks that can beat the meta, as well as why. So let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with y'all, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that's your day phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. For the students that didn't know, I just want to welcome you guys to Update Monday, a particular time where I scam you into thinking that it's a Yu-Gi-Oh video, but in fact, I'm here to make you a better person overall. Don't worry, big dogs, there are timestamps just in case you want to skip this part. I think the last time that we talked about me teaching the youth, I didn't quite have the job. But by the time you're receiving this video, I would have been employed for an entire month. And boy, I can tell you it is an entire experience. The biggest thing that I've been able to draw from this particular situation is actually using all of my experiences from my past. As a content creator, I'm so used to talking to you guys, talking to anywhere between 10 to 30 kids at one time is no problem. But it goes even deeper than that. The experiences that I've had from dealing with so many awesome children has taught me to be a better presenter, as you would say. It's taught me how to take a different approach to keep the kiddos engaged, but also something that I can transfer over to you. Basically, what I'm saying is that every single facet of your life is here for a reason. You can learn to have them benefit from one another, which will in turn make you a better person. Just like how we found 5 crazy strong Yu-Gi-Oh decks that all have something to be able to compete with some of the best decks in the meta. As your Rogue King, one of the most important things that you need to know in order to be successful is figuring out what rogue strategy is good against the best and taking advantage of that situation. So of course, big dogs, your assignment today is that I want you guys to comment down below in the comment section what are some very strong rogue decks that you guys think can compete and why you can think it can compete. I actually made a rogue tier list last week, so I'm going to be talking about some strategies mentioned, but also some strategies that I missed that you guys talked about in the comment section. So let's go ahead and start off with Melodious. Melodious is one of the strongest rogue decks when it comes to being able to play a ton of hand traps. In fact, not only is the Melodious engine small enough to be able to fit over 15 hand traps, it can fit some of the best hand traps in the game. Take for example, players have been trying to figure out how to play the Dominus cards inside of their deck. They're actually one of the biggest and most sought after hand traps that you can utilize. Since Melodious is strictly a light deck, Dominus Purge can act as an Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, but you also have access to Herald of Orange Light, which feels like a Psyframe Gear Gamma. Imagine having 9 ways to Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring your opponent through Ash, Purge, and Herald of Orange Light. It gives you so many options to be able to disrupt your opponent with high impact hand traps. But if that was the only reason why Melodious was good, we'd probably be talking about a few other decks. I have a Mad Dog of Darkness normal monster deck that can also do the same thing. So what else would separate it? Well, Melodious is also really good against hand traps. Not only does it become extremely hard to stop Melodious's first play, they can stop an Ostinato only to get punished by another one, or they can stop first solo movement only to find out that there's more plays to be had. Baka, the Melodious Maestra, can also force your opponent in some really risky situations because this card's presence not only prevents a lot of hand traps from working on your cards, oftentimes your opponent will have to check this card in order for them to be able to get their other effects. But what I really like about this deck is its budget version of Malice Whitebinder and Yugioh Detonator. Melodious, Etoile, and Schuberta are just those exact cards. While Etoile doesn't do exactly what Yugioh Detonator does, being able to sneakily get rid of your Melodious monsters for the turn means that if your opponent continues to summon a Nibiru the Primal Being might just ruin their day. And Schuberta may just be better than Malice Whitebinder, mainly because Schuberta is easier to summon and is a quick effect. It's you can only activate this effect once while face up on the field doesn't mean anything if you're using Etoile to banish it and bring it right back. So in essence, you can provide a steady presence of graveyard disruption. Melodious just may be for you if you like playing a ton of hand traps and you like making your opponent look silly. Another thing that I like about Melodious is LG and Aria. It can provide a different type of win condition for Melodious, making your fairy monsters indestructible. But that also brings me to the next Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that is really good. Alternate Wingons have been out since Exodia the Forbidden One and Legend of Blue Eyes, but not many of them are successful until it comes to Yubel. Now, the biggest thing about Yubel is that when you consider its play rate versus its win rate, it's incredibly high. In fact, we may go to say that if more players played Yubel, it may be still a tier 1 Yu-Gi-Oh strategy. And the reason behind it is really simple. Phantom of Yubel may be limited to 1, which may have also caused a lot of the glue eaters to stop playing the deck because it's not as insolent against hand interruptions, but Yubel can still insulate itself against hand traps decently well. The biggest thing about Yubel is that you force your opponent to make negative trades. An impermanence on Samsara D Lotus may seem like a good idea until you already have a Nightmare Pain follow-up. And next thing you know, your opponent is staring down really powerful monsters like Veruja's Bringer of End Times and Fiendsmith Desiree. In fact, Yubel is one of the only competitive Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that can summon Verujas. It's like a Baron de Floor. But circling back to win cons, Yubel has one of the most interesting win conditions in the game. If it can't summon really powerful monsters like the ones I mentioned before, or control the game through DDD High Wave King Caesar, as well as the Unchained line using Unchained Soul of Rage, then you could always just take your 0 attack Yubel monsters and ram them into your opponent's monsters. It's simple. The bigger board your opponent makes, the more likely it is that once you resolve Nightmare Pain, you can just ram your Yubel monsters into their monsters and inflict damage to them for game. It essentially means that the bigger board that your opponent makes, the more likely you are to actually win the game, which is kind of cool from that aspect. Now, of course, you're probably so excited about these two first decks, you're wondering where exactly could you find some personal deck lists from the professor himself. I actually try my best every single time I make one of these videos to get you guys that extra credit, and I'll be putting personal deck lists on my Patreon as a special thank you for helping me pay my editors. If you guys can't pitch in that particular way, anytime you go to TCG Player, be sure to use my link down below in the description. It really helps me out. But speaking of using your opponent's cards against them, a strategy that is unproven and fairly specific but has a ton of upside is easily Buster Blader. Buster Blader has been laying in wait for Dragon Yu-Gi-Oh strategies to be some of the best of the game. Early in the format, the Bestial monsters were big enough for Buster Blader to poke its head. And now that Kaiba's ace monster, Blue Eyes White Dragon, is one of the best decks in the game, I think this is the perfect time for Buster Blader to come fully out. No diddy. One thing that I always tell my students is that it takes a fool to catch a fool, and Buster Blader does exactly that. Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer, completely stops all dragon effects. That means that Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, the Bestial monsters, Primate Engine, and just about everything in between loses to this fusion summoned monster. But the ironic thing here is that we're not just playing Buster Blader because you're playing dragons. We're playing Buster Blader because we can incorporate dragons. Ironically enough, the Blue Eyes structure deck just so happened to release some cards to make Buster Blader more consistent. Sage with the Eyes of Blue has always been able to search Buster Whelp of the Destruction Sword, but one thing that actually tied it all together was Spirit of the Eyes of Blue being able to search Mausoleum of the White, so you can gain that additional normal summon to get your Buster Whelp's effects. This right here is huge for the deck as it allows you to be able to go into your entire combo, summoning the aforementioned Dragon Destroyer, but also allowing you to summon Buster Dragon, just in case you're going against a deck that isn't a dragon deck. I think personally this version of Buster Blader could be a cheaper alternative than the Primate version of the deck, but also a step above just the structure decks. But this strategy also has the flexibility to be a Bestial Fiendsmith deck that can run the Red Eyes engine. In actuality, I think it would be cool if you ran the Red Eyes cards alongside of Blue Eyes and the Buster Blader. You technically get Yugi, Kaiba, and Joey's cards all in one strategy. If that were to top any type of event, I think that'd probably be the most cool. In fact, I might just build it. We'll call it the Holy Trinity, the Dual Monsters Madness Mania. It's gonna be something cool. Buster Blader doesn't have enough tops, which is the reason why I think it's an unproven deck. But if we dive deeper into it, there's a strategy that has just as much boom or bust potential, if not even more. It's mainly because we don't know what cards will come out that will make it better, though we do know there will be more cards that will support it. I think Mitsurugi has the ultimate chance to be the best boom or bust potential deck. Mitsurugi is bound to get stronger with the next upcoming set, Alliance Insight, as we always receive 2 waves of support for a TCG exclusive, and then later on down the line, we're going to get another wave of support. But that's for a lot later. What Mitsurugi does really well right now are those level 8 ritual monsters. They're crazy strong, with Ame being able to destroy all monsters your opponent controls when it's special summoned, and then requiring them to discard a card when they activate a monster effect or the effect is negated. Matama being more of the backbone by allowing you to special summon reptiles and search when it's tributed. This is all supported through Mitsurugi players and Mitsurugi Ritual, allowing you to be able to ritual summon monsters from your hand or deck, so long as you have the other requirement in your hand or deck. Mitsurugi has a very bright future with already a few tops under its belt. It's a reason why players are using the Mitsurugi portion in Yugioh to be one of the top contenders. Mitsurugi has a lot of potential for the future, but maybe you want a future deck that's a little bit more on the safe side. A deck where we know the support is going to make the deck infinitely stronger, and also is a strategy that can compete with the top dogs. I think that deck is Sharks. Now, you guys have seen me talk about Sharks time after time again, but right now, baby, is Sharks time. I'm telling you, the Sharks are here. Growing up, one of my favorite Pokemon was Sharpedo, and I'm never giving up that love. Sharks have a few reasons why they can be incredibly good. I think one of the best things that they can do is follow the Mermail route. If you simply summon enough totally awesomes to your side of the field, oftentimes your opponent will give up. There aren't too many monster effects that can negate spells, traps, and monsters, takes the opponent card, and get you free resources back into your hand. Remember that. And since Sharks is a pure water deck, playing cards like Dominus Impulse is also a really easy thing to do. If you go back to what I was talking about with Melodious, a lot of players are looking for a reason. They're itching to play those Dominus cards, and Sharks provide an excellent opportunity to do so. But the next most important thing about Sharks is the Exceed plays that it can make. I've said time after time again, when it comes to the water decks, in order for them to both be competitively viable, they have to differentiate themselves from one another. There are some things that Mermail can do that Sharks simply can't, just like how there's some things that Sharks can do that Mermail simply can't. What Sharks do is that it taps into the fullest potential of the water Exceed monsters and takes it there. It's a deck that's also a little bit more flexible in the interruptions that you can play, and thanks to the new spell card 7th Tachyon, this deck is now incredibly consistent. 7th Tachyon actually makes a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh strategies really good, decks ranging from Yugioh all the way down to Madolche, but a lot of those strategies aren't able to use the cards that it reveals for 7th Tachyon, and that's where Shark separates itself. Overall, class, I think that these are 5 ridiculously solid Rogue Yu-Gi-Oh decks, but of course, like I said before, let me know down below in the comment section of some other good Rogue Yu-Gi-Oh decks. Until then, class is dismissed until I catch you on the next one.